Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.nola.com for November the 16th. I'm Zach Ewing with Spencer, the Guru Urquhart. Wherever you are watching from, however you are watching us, we welcome you into the program. Just like to remind you, if you're on YouTube, hit that like button, give us a subscribe, hit comment. Anywhere you are on Facebook, leave us a comment, and we will get to it during the show. If you have fantasy football questions about pickups this week, about trade questions, about what to do about an injury, anything of that sort, DFS, we are here to help. Spencer specifically is here to help. He is the guru. How are you, Spencer?
Hey, Zach. Doing good, man. Doing good. It was a little bit of a rough week for me. I'm not going to lie. It has as usual, a lot of unpredictable stuff and a lot of injuries, but it was good to see a lot of the elite offenses get back on track, especially the Chiefs.
Even the guru has rough weeks sometimes. It does happen. So.
Yep, it does happen. I'm not immune to bad weeks. I'll be real with y'all.
But go ahead and drop us a comment. If you do have a question throughout the show, we'll be happy to get to those. And we will get going. First of all, before we get going, we want to mention that we are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook and that you can sign up for the Caesars Sportsbook app in Louisiana now. Can't quite play yet. That's coming probably around the end of the year. But if you go to NOLA.com/Caesars, you can sign up and you get a $100 free bet bonus when betting does become live. So there is an advantage to doing it now. You don't have to deposit the money yet. You'll still get the bonus. Just go ahead and sign up for it before betting goes live. Again, that's NOLA.com/Caesars. So we thank our sponsors at Caesars Sportsbook, and go ahead and do that. If you like our content, that is one easy way to support us and get a little bonus for yourself. Now on to fantasy football. Here on the Fantasy Roundup, we'll go back, as we always do, at the week that was, looking at Week 10, starting with the top scoring quarterbacks. And as you alluded to, Spencer, a familiar name there at the top of the list. It's good to see Patrick back on his game.
Right, yeah, he really showed out against the Raiders. That was a statement game, I'd say, for him. It was in prime time. I've been hearing all this blowback from just these talking heads saying, if they figured him out, is he done? And I was just like, crazy. I mentioned on the show last week, this is the time. Get him for the low, buy low on him now, because if you don't trade for him before this week, you're not going to be able to trade for him. And sure enough, he has an amazing week there, leading the pack. And also good to see Dak and Josh Allen shake back. They had uncharacteristically off weeks the previous week, but they got right back on track. And then a couple of not so familiar names coming in behind them with Mack and Trevor Siemian.
Now, if you watched Odds and Ends on bet.nola.com yesterday, I got into it a little bit with Jim Derry, cray Jim Derry, as I've taken to calling him, who thinks that, the Saints need to switch quarterbacks to Taysom Hill. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I don't think Simeon's done a bad job at all. Certainly from a fantasy perspective, if you're in a super flex or something, or a DFS situation where you turn to him, I honestly wouldn't have suggested it, but he did just fine. They don't play at a fast pace, but without Alvin Kamara available, the running game was struggling, and Trevor Siemian was able to move the ball, especially in that second half. So that was interesting. I do think, Spencer, and tell me how you feel about this, but Mac Jones going forward is a guy who should be on your radar to be a starter if you don't have one of those top 5 quarterbacks. At least in a matchup perspective, here or there, you could stream him in.
Yeah, he's got a lot of potential with the way the Patriots offense is starting to come together there. They're going to be more of a run-oriented team, though, with him being a rookie. It's not like Belichick's going to turn him loose into a gunslinger, but he does have potential to get more work as a passer, get more acclimated. Belichick will start trusting him more, and he's been a good decision maker so far. So, yeah, he's definitely in the streamer conversation.
Let's move on to the top scoring running backs for Week 10, and some surprise names here. The bottom 2 on the list are the familiar ones. Christian McCaffrey getting back onto his high volume, high productivity train. Same thing with Jonathan Taylor. But some interesting names at the top. And I think they each one of them individually, Darrell Williams, Rhamondre, Stevenson, and A.J. Dillon, all bring up interesting conversations. So let's just go down the list. Darrell Williams has been spectacular since Clyde Edwards-Helaire went out with injury for the Chiefs. CEH is coming back probably next week. If not next week, then the week after. Has Darrell Williams taken over as the starter in KC, Spencer? I mean, are you still starting Clyde if you've got him when he comes back?
Oh yeah, I'm still starting Clyde. I feel like he's definitely still the starter. You know, the first round draft pick, they really believe in him. He was the starter before Darrell's breakout. And I mean, Darrell's been with him for a little while now. He's just one of those, kind of like when they had Damian Williams. It's kind of similar in that if they need him to start, he'll start and do well. But he's not someone that they really want to start. I don't believe so. I'm still good with CEH. I feel like the theme with a lot of these is Stevenson, Dillon even. I mean, I love Dillon. Dillon's a beast, but it's just they all three of these at the top, they took advantage of injuries because for all of them to have these kind of weeks, they had to have someone in front of them get hurt. So, I mean, they're all very talented, but not sure if they'll be able to sustain that. Definitely won't be able to sustain that level of production with the starters coming back.
No, and the interesting thing about Darrell Williams is that his pass catching ability has been used so much more than the Chiefs ever used Edwards-Helaire. And that's curious to me because Edwards-Helaire was drafted with the idea that he could be a pass catching back in that offense, sort of like Andy Reid used to use in Philadelphia with Brian Westbrook. And he's just never been used that way. And all of a sudden, Darrell Williams comes in and now they're throwing passes to him left and right. He made a beautiful touchdown catch late in that game against the Raiders. Looked like a wide receiver. I mean, he probably saved Patrick Mahomes from throwing an interception and came down with the touchdown instead. So it's just interesting. Another LSU guy taking time away from an LSU guy with Darrell Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But I do think there may be a risk there if you own CEH that he has lost a little bit of time. That when he comes back, instead of getting 80% of the snaps now, maybe he gets more like 60 or 70% of the snaps. But we'll see. Obviously, both guys are talented. If you have them both, it's going to be a little bit tricky to decide which one to start there, at least for the first couple of weeks until we see their usage. Rhamondre Stevenson, you mentioned with Damian Harris out, for the Patriots. Rhamondre Stevenson had a big game. All the Patriots seem to have a big game against the Browns. And then A.J. Dillon, I have A.J. Dillon rostered in one of my leagues just because I believe so much in his talent that I thought he'd be a must-start every week if Aaron Jones ever got hurt. Lo and behold, Aaron Jones is hurt. And now I'm starting A.J. Dillon every week until he comes back.
Right, yeah, like you mentioned about Darrell Williams eating in the CEH's workload when he comes back. I think the same will be true with A.J. Dillon with Aaron Jones. I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be a workhorse when he comes back because A.J. Dillon's proven that it should probably be a 50-50 split. Both backs are super talented.
And really, Aaron Jones got hurt late in the third quarter of that game in Green Bay, and Dillon already had 10 or 12 touches at that time. So it's not like he just came in and cleaned up when Aaron Jones got hurt. Now, he got all of the fourth quarter work because of that, and that was significant. But, you're right. He was eating in a little bit to Aaron Jones' time anyway. We do have a question from James. James Kennedy says, better flex. He's looking at Myles Gaskin, Cole Beasley, or Corey Davis. What do you think there, Spencer, for a flex?
I'm thinking here, due to a matchup, I'd have to go with Gaskin. He gets a great matchup against the Jets. The Jets' run defense is atrocious. They give up big games to running backs all the time, it seems like. And I feel like Beasley is just too hit or miss. And same with Davis. Neither of them are what I would consider target hogs in their respective offenses, where Gaskin is back to being the workhorse in Miami, it looks like. So in this matchup, I feel like he's the move.
Yeah, I think you're right there, James. The only thing I'd say, if you're in a situation where you've got a bunch of injuries or buys this week and you need somebody to hit a home run, maybe Corey Davis is more likely to hit a home run, catch a long touchdown pass or something. But I think Spencer's right. The safe play there is definitely Gaskin. Moving on to top scoring wide receivers from Week 10. Debo alert on Monday Night Football. Debo went crazy. And then in the main slate on Sunday, for DFS purposes, if you had Stephon Diggs or CeeDee Lamb in your lineup, you were a happy camper. Or really Kendrick Bourne, too, because he was a low price. I mean, that was a guy who won some people some money in DFS.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, that was a surprising effort from Bourne, but he's been a quiet number 2 there in New England. Jacoby Myers finally caught a touchdown, so that was good to see. But yeah, Bourne has been pretty solid, and yeah, the top 4 all household names. Our dude Cooper Kupp finally got kept out of the top 5 this week. It seemed like he had been in the top 5 every week.
You know what's funny is I think he was number 6.
Yeah, he still had a decent game with them playing in garbage time, even though the offense as a whole stunk for the Rams. But yeah, that group is Debo, man. He's showing that he's probably the best value. If you go back at it, all the guys that were drafted, his ADP was around the 8th or 9th round. That's just an absolute steal. No one. I don't think there's any better value right now than him.
Well, him and Cooper Kupp too would have been a steal in any league. In fact, I've mentioned this probably 3 times already this year, and I know y'all are getting sick of it, but the fact that I was 1 spot away from getting Cooper Kupp, I had him targeted for the whole round. I was so excited to get him. He was going to be my number 2 receiver behind Devontae Adams, and then the guy right before me, sniper, got him. I ended up with Amari Cooper, who it has been okay. I mean, he's been hit or miss. It hasn't been a disaster or anything, but just imagining that lineup in my head with Cooper Kupp with Devontae Adams, it would have been a beautiful thing. But anyway, those are my own personal regrets. You are on the Fantasy Roundup here for Week 11 of the NFL season. Zach Ewing and Spencer Urquhart with you. Moving on to the top-scoring tight ends of Week 10. And again, some familiar names up here. Not real big scores, but good to see. As we mentioned, the Chiefs got real healthy, Travis Kelce, and also another Patriot, Hunter Henry, had a big week. And then Mark Andrews. Tyler Conklin, a guy we've talked about as a waiver wire possibility for a couple of weeks now. He also had a good week. And then George Kittle back on the productive path also.
Right, yeah, a lot of familiar faces there per usual. Kelce, Andrews, Kittle. Conklin, good to see him getting some red zone usage. He didn't get a whole lot of catches and yards, but he got 2 touchdowns, so that was a positive for him. And then Hunter Henry's been a surprising usage hog in the red zone. So I know Jonnu Smith, he's a must start as long as Jonnu's out. So yeah, this tight end position it's better than usual, I'd say. It's been a good amount of production.
Yeah, and I know Dallas Goedert left his game early too, so there may be some owners looking for tight end help. And we'll get to waiver wire advice here in just a minute to see if anybody is looking for that. But in the meantime, let's wrap up Week 10 with our fantasy stars. And we're going to start with Spencer. And we talked about this guy a little bit. And again, he was having a big game before the starter went out, before Aaron Jones went out. But A.J. Dillon was really just mammoth.
Yeah, he really was. I had to put him on here because I had him in a league where it was a close game, and I had Nick Chubb out, so I was like, man, what do I do? I was like, man, I need an RB2. I don't know what, but I was like, I have A.J. Dillon on the bench. Let's plug him in. He should do well today, and he did even better than I expected. And it was a pretty close game, so his big game elevated me to the dub. But he's great, man. Glad to have him moving forward. Now I'll have Chubb back. My backfield will be Chubb, Najee, and A.J. Dillon. So look out in that league to all my league mates. I'm 4-6 now, and it's been a tough start, but I'm ready to make a stretch run.
Similar story. I have David Montgomery and Joe Mixon as my starters in a league, both of them on bye. And so Michael Carter is one of my backups. I put him in and then was looking for an RB2 just like you, and I have Dillon on my bench. But then I found out that Chris Carson with the Seahawks wasn't going to start. I have Alex Collins. That'll be a safer play. I'll put Alex Collins in. Whoops. Alex Collins does nothing. A.J. Dillon goes for 26.8 points, and I ended up losing my game by, I think, 6 or 7. So that was my mistake. But that's, again, sometimes you can't always predict these things. A.J. Dillon obviously was not a starting running back, and so Collins made more sense on one level. But it didn't work out for me in that one. My fantasy star of the week, and we talked about him too, but it is Patrick Mahomes. Just look at those numbers. 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, highest score of any player, highest score by any quarterback by 9.9 points, basically 10 points. And again, if you were patient and held on to him, and not just held on to him, but started him, because he had a couple of bad weeks, but you were very richly rewarded if you were patient with Patty Mahomes.
Right. Yeah, I wish I'd have taken my own advice and traded for him. I was just like, is anyone going to really trade him? Which I probably should have sent out some feeler offers. But yeah, that ship sailed now. He's back. And yeah, I mean, he's such an elite talent. I mean, anyone that really thought that he had lost a step, to me, is just silly.
I guess the bigger question would be, has the Chiefs offense lost a step? Do they have offensive line problems? And if you believe that, would you consider trying to sell Mahomes now that he's had a big week, especially if you have a quality backup? I mean, is that a path you'd look at?
That actually is a good point. It's possible if you could get, I know trade deadlines are coming up in a lot of leagues because the Raiders are they're in turmoil right now. So it was a pretty easy matchup. It's not like he lit up the Steelers or the Bills or something. So, I mean, I could consider it, but it would be hard for me to trade him because I still believe he's an elite fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, quarterback's one spot where there's not a ton of drop-off. There was this week, but there's not normally a ton of drop-off. And so if you have another good option, but you're deficient somewhere else, maybe you do look into trading Mahomes. It's certainly a possibility. But in the meantime, the more traditional way to improve your roster, of course, is the waiver wire. And here on the Fantasy Roundup, we will turn our attention now to Week 11. And Spencer, your waiver targets for Week 11, a familiar name there at the top.
Yeah, well, Cam Newton, he's back. I'm back. Oh, yep. He sure was. Had a big impact. Wasn't even the starter. And so now that he's taken over as the starter, I think he's definitely worth a pickup if you need a quarterback because of his dual threat ability. He gets a good matchup this week against Washington, against his former coach, Ron Rivera. That'll be interesting to see how he does in that one. But I think he'll do really well. He's got a big chip on his shoulder after having to sit out half the season. And I think he's going to come out guns a-blazing, and he might not – yeah, I mean, he's never going to be a great passer, but for fantasy with his dual threat ability, he's always in the mix, I'd say. And then Rhamondre Stevenson, we mentioned him earlier. To me, he's a must-add, even though Harris could be back this week, but I still would go and get Stevenson because he's shown that Belichick trusts him. If Harris is out, Belichick trusts him to be the workhorse after not trusting him earlier in the season. So I'm thinking that he's somebody that, kind of like with A.J. Dillon, even though he's not the starter, he's definitely worth keeping stashed on the bench. And then there wasn't a whole lot at receiver this week, so I would dove a little deeper with Bryan Edwards, a good deep ball guy there for a Raiders team that's probably going to have to be playing from behind a lot. Their defense isn't too good over there. So I'm thinking Edwards might be able to have a strong stretch run.
We do have a question here that has come in from Oyol, I guess. Kareem Hunt or Saquon Barkley. And both those guys coming off injuries. Number one, Kareem Hunt has not been activated off IR yet. So if that doesn't happen, you got to keep an eye on those injury reports. But let's say they're both going to play this week, Spencer. Saquon Barkley has the Bucs on Monday night. Kareem Hunt has the Lions on Sunday, but Nick Chubb also probably coming back. Where do you land there?
Yeah, that's tough. I'd say for rest of season, definitely Saquon, as he's going to be the primary guy. This week is a tough matchup against Tampa Bay, but I'd probably still go with him, even for this week over Hunt. I mean, Antonio Gibson just had a good week against Tampa's run defense. Maybe that run defense isn't quite as good as it once was, and I think Saquon's going to be really motivated to come back, where Hunt, I think Hunt, if he comes back, could do okay, but they'll probably want to ease him in more as far as like Chubb. As long as coming off COVID, they should be back to his normal workload, where Hunt, coming off of more serious injury, I wouldn't expect them to use him a whole lot this week. So I'm taking Saquon.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, and again, you have to watch the injury reports there. If one of those guys is doubtful or won't play and the other one will, obviously you have to go with the healthy one. But the Monday night factor with Saquon also complicates that because you may not know for sure if he's going to play on Monday. Although at this point, I think it looks like he is.
Looking good.
Yeah. It looks like this is the week for him, which means that the Devontae Booker gravy train is rolling to an end too. I've rode that for a few weeks in one of my leagues too. So we'll see what happens with the Giants. But Saquon, obviously an elite talent if he's able to play. My waiver wire targets, speaking of filling in for an elite talent, the Titans still trying to replace Derrick Henry. They went out and got Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson, frankly, has kind of fallen flat on his face. I think I read in 2 games now with the Titans, he's got 19 carries and 1 missed tackle. So 1 missed or broken tackle. I mean, so he's not getting to the second level at all. He's averaging 2.7 yards per carry. But Deonta Foreman, on the other hand, he looks like he's got a little get up and go in him. He looked pretty good against the Saints. I think he's going to start to get a little more of that target share. And if you are in a spot like I am in a couple leagues where you really need a running back, Deonta Foreman's worth a target in my mind. Also, Taysom Hill, the Saints, they haven't officially made a change yet, but keep an eye on that, because if the Saints do say on Thursday or Friday, like, Taysom's going to start, and Sean Payton may not even say it, but if the reports come out, he immediately becomes like a top 10 quarterback because of that rushing ability. He's going to rack up the rushing yards. The Saints are going to use him. And just like we saw with Trevor Siemian, even passing the ball, the offense is such that Sean Payton will design plays to get some yardage for his team, and Taysom Hill stands to benefit if he is indeed named starter. And then at tight end, we talked about some tight end problems. If you've got Dallas Goedert and he's hurt, if you've got Jonnu Smith and he's hurt, Dan Arnold is just, he's turned into a real consistent option for Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to have Dan Arnold in some leagues. He's basically their number one receiver right now. He's been killing it. And, Foreman I like a lot. I feel like he's somebody that, with Adrian Peterson looking truly washed up, I'm thinking that Foreman might be able to steal that job, like you said, and just looking pretty spry, looking like he may have finally be over that Achilles injury from a couple of years ago. And then Taysom, somewhat intriguing for sure. Just, man, it's the Saints offense, so it's just such a train wreck with no receivers. But he does have that rushing upside, so definitely worth adding in Superflex, no doubt.
Yeah, Superflex, you got to have him. In a regular league, it kind of depends on where you're at with quarterback. But if he's named the starter, I really do think he becomes, at the very least, a streaming option there. You'll back with another question. Kareem Hunt, Marquise Brown, or Hunter Renfrow? I'm going to go Marquise Brown there, Spencer. I don't know what you think, but he's the right combination of floor and ceiling for me this week.
Right. Yeah, Hollywood. He's probably the move here. Renfrow, they play the Bengals. Okay, yeah, that's not a great matchup. I'd say if Renfrow had a better matchup, because Hollywood plays the Bears, which is although the Bears aren't that great in the secondary. They've been burned on deep balls before. Hollywood's the move here, I'd say.
And he's clearly the number one in Baltimore right now. So that's the guy you want, especially. Justin Fields could turn into a real fine option. In fact, I almost put him down as a DFS value this week against the Ravens because I think that game has some sneaky shootout potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well could. Yeah, but just don't forget about Rashad Bateman, though, in Baltimore. He's been pounding the table for him.
You've been on Rashad all season. And I've got him rostered in at least one league that I can think of, and I may have to play him this week, so we'll see what happens. Moving on to DFS values here on the Fantasy Roundup. And Spencer, you got a little Bengals stack going on here in your Week 11 values.
Right. Yeah, I like the Joe Burrow, T. Higgins stack. Jamar Chase is obviously the number one there, great talent, but we're looking for values here. And I feel like Higgins is just really undervalued there at 5,400. Burrow at 6,600 is a solid value. Quarterbacks is just such a good matchup, I feel like. And then Higgins, oh man, that's just like, wow, I couldn't believe he was that low because I feel like he's still the clear-cut number 2 with Tyler Boyd not doing all that much there. And there's really nothing else. It's a pretty narrow target tree there. It's basically Chase, Higgins, a little bit of Boyd, maybe a tad bit of Uzama, and that's it. So it's like Burrow should go off this week. He'll be fresh coming off a bye, and Higgins the best value out of all his weapons. I'd say James Conner I thought was a really nice value at 6,100 and gets a great matchup against the Seahawks. No Chase Edmonds. Again, he's on IR, so I expect Conner to rack up and continue his touchdown streak. And then Dawson Knox at tight end. I know his return this week was pretty rough, but I'm thinking he'll bounce back this coming week against the Colts, and is a really nice value there right at 4,000.
Yeah, Dawson Knox, a name who really exploded onto the scene and then got hurt almost and was gone almost as quickly as he was out there. So interesting there. I like it for 4,000. I like it. My DFS values for the week, and I want to turn this into a little bit of a larger conversation, but Cam Newton and DJ Moore, you could get him for less than 11,000 combined. And DJ Moore has been very vocal about being happy that Cam's back. He thinks he's getting the ball more. I can't imagine he says that without having some reason to believe that Cam's going to target him more than Sam Darnold did or PJ Walker did. And then A.J. Dillon, 6,200. Again, the guy's super talented. He's still not priced up to the point where he should be. I mean, I think you have to consider him as good as Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones would never be priced that low. Never. So I hop on Dillon immediately, almost a free space in those DFS lineups. And then Tyler Conklin of the Vikings. He had a good week last week. It's hard to bank on 2 in a row, but the Packers have also been somewhat vulnerable to the tight end because that defense has been so good against receivers. And so Russell Wilson went to Gerald Everett a lot, for instance, on Sunday. And so I think Conklin could go off again. But I did want to turn this into a little bit of a larger conversation, Spencer. Cam Newton, are you buying him all the way as a top 10 QB for the rest of the season? And then what does he do to the rest of the Panthers' weapons?
I'm about to say no on that. I'm not buying him to be that good. I feel like if he was still that good, he would have been on a roster. I don't know. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he'll have some top 10 weeks, no doubt. As far as being consistent, though, I think it's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys. It's going to be some weeks he looks really good, other weeks he's going to stink. I feel like it's not going to be a whole lot better than Darnold. I mean, I think it'll be an upgrade, but it's not going to be like the Panthers of 2015. And DJ Moore, though, I mean, DJ Moore has had a great year. He had an off game this week, but I was with PJ Walker. So I think Cam's return definitely helps him.
We got PJ Walker, DJ Moore, AJ Dillon. These abbreviations are getting confusing, man. But I think I agree with you. I don't know that Cam is top 10 rest of season. I think he's top 15. I think he's in a spot with the rushing. He's going to get some goal line work where maybe again, he's in that territory where if you have a lower end starter, you could talk about him as a streamer. You could pop him on your bench or certainly in a super flex league. I mean, I think he's a QB2 anyway.
Yep, right on. Yeah, he's definitely worth getting in there in those super flex leagues. He was a steal for anyone that got him off the waiver wire. He might still be out there in super flex because it was a late deal. So, yeah, go get him if you can. Yeah,
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. But I have a super flex league where I have Trevor Lawrence as my QB2, and I may start Cam because I was able to pick him up last week. Let's see. We do have a question, a comment in here from Christoph Eregs. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation. Says, greetings from Denmark. Good evening to you. Denmark qualified for the World Cup this week, I think. So congratulations. Should I trade CEH, Mitchell, and Evans, believing that's Elijah Mitchell and Mike Evans, for Alvin Kamara and Adam Thielen, 0.5 points per reception? I think I'd do that deal, Spencer. I think you may be a little higher on CEH than me. Elijah Mitchell, by the way, had a broken finger. He's questionable for next week. Now, that's sort of a short term. It's probably just a 1 week injury. But I think I like the upside of Kamara and Thielen there.
Yeah, it's a solid deal. The only thing I would say, I would ask for a third piece in return to go with it because Mitchell's the real deal. Elijah Mitchell's a really nice piece. I feel like him and CEH for Kamara is fair compensation, and Evans and Thielen. I actually don't prefer Evans over Thielen. So because of that, I would ask for like a bench running back a piece. You could get I don't know what his roster is, but it could be a piece like a Nyheim Hines or somebody that would at least be a decent depth to go with it.
Well, one thing in those deals you can do when you're the one getting 2 and giving up 3, other way around, giving up 3 and getting 2 players, who are you going to drop? Can you throw them in? Because a lot of times, especially if it's a deep league, the last guy on somebody's bench is a pretty good player. Or at least a pretty good depth piece. Maybe it's an Alexander Madison at the Vikings, it's worth having on your bench because if Dalvin Cook gets hurt or if these domestic assault allegations, I don't think it's 100% sure thing Dalvin Cook's going to play for the rest of the year. And I'm just throwing Madison out as an example. But, you might as well ask, who are you going to drop? Will you throw him in? Or you look at his roster and maybe target a lower-end player specifically. But I do love the idea, especially if you're safely in your playoff picture, adding Alvin Kamara, Adam Thielen, 2 teams that are going to be in the playoff race. They're not going to be resting starters in the fantasy playoffs. They're going to be going after it. Those are 2 guys I love targeting.
Yes, indeed. No. Good deal. Yeah, I'll try to get it. Just see what you can get for that third piece.
And it's a fair deal too. And I agree with you. Mike Evans a little bit better than Thielen, but I think Alvin Kamara clearly the best back in that if he's healthy, which all reports are he's not out long term. So let's do sleepers. We're talking to you on the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.nola.com. It's brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. Go ahead, give us a like, drop us a subscription or a comment on YouTube. And we have a few minutes left, so we'll get to your questions. But first of all, our Week 11 sleepers, I might have stole your thunder on this one just a little bit, Spencer. I mentioned Deonta Freeman earlier.
Oh, Dante Foreman, actually, but he's
Foreman, yeah. Boy, that's a typo, isn't it?
Yeah, so I probably got mixed up with Devonta Freeman.
Yep. It is Deonta Foreman that Spencer is talking about. Foreman.
Right. Yeah, maybe one day we'll have a Dante Freeman. It wouldn't surprise me, all the crazy names they got. But anyway, yeah, Foreman, I think good. It's a great matchup this week against the Texans. That's the main reason I put him on the sleepers deal. I usually target guys that are kind of under the radar that have matchups to potentially, really blow up. So I'm thinking this could be the week Foreman takes over that backfield and sorry, Adrian Peterson, but he's just not getting it done, man. And Jeremy McNichols, clearly a third down back at this, but not a primary running back. So I think Foreman could break out.
And I went deep sleeper this week, and I know I just said I'd probably start Cam over him. But I do feel like Trevor Lawrence has been he's been bad for a couple of weeks. That's why he's a sleeper, because he has not been good for 2 or 3 weeks now. But I still look at Trevor Lawrence and think there's something there. They're playing the 49ers this week. The 49ers, you think they've got a good defense. They do get a fair share of sacks and turnovers. They also give up a ton of passing yards. They're like 29th in the NFL in passing defense. If they're ahead, Trevor Lawrence is going to throw a lot. He's going to scramble. He's going to run. Sooner or later, the touchdowns are going to come. Am I crazy, Spencer?
No, I wouldn't say you're crazy. I don't know the 49ers.
It's okay. You can call me Spencer. You can call me crazy. It's okay.
Yeah, I was like, he does have an elite ability, so it wouldn't shock me if he did well this week. The offense has been in such a rut, and the 49ers are doing pretty well in defense as of late. So I wouldn't expect him to pop this week, but he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. I feel like at some point he's got to break out. He's so talented.
He just seems like one of those guys who is going to win somebody a DFS slate one of these weeks. And you just have to be, you have to be on him at the right time, right? But like even last night, the 49ers defense looked absolutely elite. Matthew Stafford still threw for 250 yards. He still had several opportunities in the red zone. And obviously Stafford's more experienced than Lawrence, whatever. I think if they're behind, the Jaguars are going to go for broke. I don't mind him this week. Again, we're talking about quarterbacks. If you're in a one-quarterback league, you probably have a better option. But from a DFS perspective or a Superflex perspective, I certainly don't mind him this week. If you have questions, I know we've answered a few. Go ahead and drop them. We just have a couple of minutes left. But if you have questions throughout the week, you can certainly ask Spencer on Twitter or Instagram. He is at Spencer the Guru on both of those platforms, and happy to answer those questions. You can also read his columns on bet.nola.com both Tuesday and Thursday. And that is also in the Friday edition of The Advocate and Times-Picayune. You can read Spencer and his matchup advice for the following week. It's getting down to it, man. What do we got? 3, depending on your league, 3 or 4 weeks left before the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, it's getting to the nitty-gritty time. It's the time where if you're going to make your league's playoffs, you got to make a move here. If you're already up there, just maintain it. Don't do anything crazy. Like I'm in a league where I'm 9-1, so I'm not even messing with the waiver wire. I'm content with my team. They're doing well. I'm not worth trying to overthink it. But if you're a team that kind of in go for broke mode, then yeah, try to shake things up. Don't want to just sit there and not make any moves.
If you are 9-1 for like the team you mentioned, and you're basically locked into the playoffs at this point, are you trying to arrange your bench so that you have handcuffs, so that you have the backup running backs and backup the next receiving options? Or if you have solid depth besides, are you not worried about that?
Yeah, this league it's a 10-team league, so I'm not super worried about it because I have really solid depth, so I don't want to drop those guys. But if you're in like a 12-man or especially a 14-man league, yeah, definitely get your handcuffs lined up because there's just not a whole lot of quality depth to go around. So yeah, if it just kind of depends on the depth of the league, that's sort of the handcuffs are really important in those deep leagues, because if you don't have them, then you're looking at a wire and it's like, oh crap, there's nothing there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Spencer. Well, we appreciate the time and the advice this week. We want to remind you all that we're brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook here on bet.nola.com, and you can get the Caesar Sportsbook app in Louisiana by going to NOLA.com/Caesars. And if you do so, you sign up today, you'll get a $100 free bet bonus at launch. That means $100 you can bet on anything you want. If you cash it, you're in the money. If you don't, no harm, no foul. So go ahead and download it. It's very easy to use. It's actually fun to download it. We were talking about this on the Sports Betting 101 show last week. It's fun to just download it and poke around and see what different options they have, mess around with parlays and teasers, see what they pay. You can actually put in the dollar amount you want to bet, and it'll tell you what the payout is. Obviously, you can't actually bet yet, but it does help you kind of practice and prepare for when you can, so that you can move around the app and see how the live odds work, see how all those other things work. So it's a good deal. Check it out, NOLA.com/Caesars. To that end, we will be back on Thursday with At the Book, myself, Jim Derry, Devin Jackson, and we will lead you into the football weekend from a sports betting perspective. Pretty good fantasy game, Patriots and Falcons coming up on Thursday night too, Spencer. And before we go, it looks like Ray Gamer got a couple of questions in for us. Let's answer these real quick before we go. First one, tight ends, looking at Gesicki against the Jets, Dawson Knox or the Colts, or if he should get Hunter Henry off waivers. It's okay, so it's not a PPR. If you can get Henry, I'm going Henry there. But Gesicki, all three of them are good options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since it's standard, if it's between Gesicki and Knox, I'd go Knox because there's more potential for a touchdown, I'd say.
Are you in agreement on Henry if Ray can get him on waivers?
Yeah, I'd say so, because I wouldn't expect Jonnu Smith back, and even so, I mean, Henry's the go-to guy there in the red zone, and what's been a pretty, I won't say explosive, but it's starting to become more explosive Patriots offense.
Yeah, I like Henry there, and then if not, Spencer says go with Dawson Knox. And then the other question from Ray, what defense to stream this week? We have the Chargers against the Steelers, Panthers against the football team, or the Browns against the Lions. Now, a week ago, I think I would have said the Browns, but they got pulverized by New England. What do you think?
I'm thinking this is tough. I'd say either the Chargers or the Browns. I'm going to give the edge to I'm going to go with the Chargers. I'm thinking even if Big Ben can come back, that Steelers offense is kind of broken right now. It is, and I'm going Chargers.
I agree with you. I think the Panthers are a clear number 3 there. Washington's been a little bit better lately. They've got some weapons. Chargers or Browns is a toss-up, but the Steelers have been a mess, so you can't necessarily go wrong with that. But I do think, and we'll talk about this on Thursday, I love the Browns against the Lions. The Lions got that tie. They've had a pattern this year where they play well, they play somebody close, and then they get killed the next week. And if that follows, they're going to get killed by Cleveland. So I'm actually, the more I think about this, I kind of like the Browns defense. I think you could rack up some points there. One last question. 10-man full PPR. Fournette, Eckler, A.J. Dillon at running back, Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen at wide receiver. Which one do you bench? He's got a loaded roster here.
Yeah, for real. Probably Fournette.
See. Yeah, I think you got to bench Fournette there. A.J. Brown struggled a little bit. This is a pretty tough one. This is from Obesity Speaks.
Yeah, I would. Because Fournette, I mean, I know he catches passes too, but I feel like that I don't see that being like a big shootout against the Giants. And on Monday, I think it was last year, they struggled against the Giants. I don't know. I mean, it's just, I can't see sitting any of those receivers or A.J. Dillon since he's the starter. It's just, they're all great options.
I mean, you're certainly going to play Eckler there. You're certainly going to play Dillon and DK. I know, even if your opponent's got Russell, either way. I think I agree with you. I'd bench Fournette. That is a loaded roster, though. You should feel pretty good about that one.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I think he'll be fine. whichever direction you decide to go.
All right, guys, we appreciate the questions as always. You can reach out to Spencer at Spencer the Guru on Twitter or Instagram if you have more. Until next Tuesday, this has been the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. Have a good day.